Joanna of Austria was born into power, wealth, and something far more sinister, bloodline obsession. In 1535, she arrived as the youngest daughter of Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, and Isabella of Portugal, both first cousins. Her birth was less celebrated than inspected. Her fingers, ears, and nose were examined for signs of purity. She was not just a child, but a vessel of ancestral purity, a Habsburg experiment. From a moment she breathed her first in Madrid's ornate royal chambers, Joanna's life was charted by her blood. She bore the unmistakable Habsburg features, protruding jaw, wide-set eyes, and solemn expression, traits refined through generations of cousin marriages. Royal painters flattered her image, but in reality, her face was a reminder of generations folded onto themselves. Isolated from siblings, she was taught Latin, theology, and dynastic duty by nuns who feared her soul might carry the same melancholia that haunted her mother before her. Her tutors whispered of her brother Philip's coldness and the rumors that madness coursed through their grandfather's veins. Joanna's lineage was her birthright, but also her prison. At age 12, she was already being prepped to marry her double cousin, a future husband she had never met but shared a grandmother with. It wasn't love, it was arithmetic. Two lines of Habsburgs must merge again. The dynasty didn't care if she bled, cried, or cracked, so long as the line endured. By age 14, Joanna had memorized the names of over 200 ancestors. Some were mad, others murderous. Her governess warned her not to ask about her grandmother, Joanna the Mad, who had kept her husband's corpse in her bed for years. But the whispers grew louder. Madness was not shameful in her family. It was tradition. The Habsburgs traced their bloodline like monks tracing scripture. Every branch of her family tree curled back in on itself. Her uncle had married his niece. Her own parents were first cousins. Her father, Charles V, suffered from epilepsy, gout, and melancholia. He once ordered his meals prepared by 6 different servants in sequence to prevent poisoning. In this haunted house of blood, Joanna lived quietly, her letters censored and her rooms guarded. She began seeing figures in the mirrors, ancestors she imagined speaking in Latin, warning her of the womb of repetition. Her brother, Philip II, now king, barely acknowledged her. To him, she was a bargaining chip, virgin, Catholic, and dangerously obedient. One morning, Joanna found a Habsburg skull on her pillow. "A relic," said the priest, "a reminder of your legacy." She held it in her hands. The teeth were uneven, the jaw protruding. It looked like hers. The portraits on the wall looked no different. Cousins marrying cousins, generations folding over themselves like origami made from diseased parchment. Joanna realized she wasn't meant to live freely. She was meant to be reborn again and again into the same form, until something broke. She wondered when it would break. At 16, Joanna was sent to Lisbon to marry Prince John of Portugal, her double cousin. The wedding was less a celebration than a medical ritual. She was dressed in gold thread and examined by midwives to confirm her virginity. Her uncle, the Portuguese king, declared her hips favorable. Her husband said nothing. Joanna didn't love John. She barely knew him. He shared her jawline, her melancholy eyes, and her silence. At the wedding banquet, they sat across from each other like twins in mourning. The guests joked that they looked like brother and sister. They were wrong. They were closer than that. Their union was meant to reinforce the Habsburg Portuguese bloodline. But as weeks passed, Joanna became aware of the cost. Her husband rarely touched her. When he did, it was mechanical, quick, awkward, emotionless. He often vomited after. When she became pregnant, the court celebrated. Her child would be another perfectly bred Habsburg, another loop in the endless Ouroboros. But Joanna bled throughout her pregnancy, plagued by dizziness and fits of fainting. The physicians blamed her cold blood, a phrase that horrified her. In secret, she wrote a letter to her confessor. "I feel as if I am birthing not a child, but a mirror." She gave birth to a boy, Sebastian, who bore all the classic features: the Habsburg jaw, the pale eyes, the sallow skin. But even as he cried, the midwives whispered, "He looks unfinished." Joanna refused to look at him for 3 days. Her husband died suddenly just months later, possibly from a congenital defect no one dared name. Joanna was now a widow. At 17, after Prince John's death, Joanna became a royal widow at 17. But instead of returning home to Spain, she remained in Portugal, at the insistence of her brother, Philip II. He feared losing control of her son, the heir to both Iberian crowns. So Joanna was kept like an artifact, adored, silenced, and observed. She wore only black veils, black gloves, black lace over her face. The Holy Widow, they called her. Servants whispered that she never blinked. But inside, her soul seethed. She wasn't grieving her husband. She was grieving the life she never had. The palace was lined with mirrors, gilded, warped, ever watching. Joanna began avoiding her own reflection. In the long, empty corridors, she saw visions of herself walking the other way. At night, she slept with candles burning to chase away the shadows of her son's twitching limbs and his father's pale corpse. Though she longed to take her son back to Spain, Philip II forbade it. "The child belongs to Portugal," he said coldly. Joanna wrote to him, begging, "Let me be a mother, not just a vessel." He never replied. She was given a confessor and a rosary, and told to be patient. Her hair began to fall out. Her jaw ached. Her nose bled at random. The court physicians said it was divine grief. But Joanna knew better. The sickness wasn't in her soul. It was in her blood. Her only companion was silence. Silence, and the growing fear that her son would become a king made of glass, just like his father. By age 20, Joanna renounced the world, not out of faith but despair. She returned to Spain and founded a convent, the Monasterio de los Descalzos Reales. But this was no sanctuary. It was a mausoleum for the living. Here, noble women with shattered wombs and broken minds were hidden away like porcelain saints. Joanna became its abbess in all but name. She dressed like a nun but never took vows, an eternal half-life. Her days were filled with prayer, fasting, and confession. The walls were painted with saints pierced by arrows and martyrs weeping blood. Her body, too, was becoming penitent. Her joints stiffened. Her jaw protruded more each year. Her left eye drooped. She believed her body was decaying because her blood was wrong, bred too closely to its own reflection, she once whispered to a priest. She banned mirrors from the convent. Even polished brass was forbidden. The sisters feared her, but worshipped her. She spoke softly, but with fire. She often quoted Revelation, and "I saw a woman drunken with the blood of the saints." Each night, she lit candles for her dead husband and recited prayers for her son. She missed him, but she also feared what he would become. Letters from Portugal describe Sebastian as a fragile boy, obsessed with death and prophecy. Joanna saw herself in him, folded, fractured, and fading. Joanna's greatest torment was silence. Her son, Sebastian, never wrote back. She sent dozens of letters, each one carefully inked, every word chosen like a prayer. In them, she warned him gently about the sorrow in our blood and begged him to marry wisely, outside the family. The letters were intercepted. Portuguese courtiers didn't trust the woman they called the Spanish widow. Her brother Philip had spies in Lisbon too. They all feared the same thing, that Joanna might try to disrupt the dynasty's design. She began writing secret letters in cipher, hidden between pages of illuminated religious texts. One monk claimed she'd become a prophetess scribbling apocalypse. Another called her too clever for a woman of faith. That was dangerous. One night, the convent caught fire. Her chamber was untouched, but her letters, her hidden voice, were ashes. She wept for days and refused food. A nun found her sitting in her chamber with her fingers bleeding. She had tried to carve a message into her writing desk. "I'm not a mirror. I'm a last crack." From that day on, Joanna never wrote again. She spent her time in the catacombs, praying near the bones of her ancestors. She said they still whispered, still demanded things of her. The Habsburg blood didn't just breed faces, it bred voices, and they were always hungry. In 1570, news reached Joanna that her son, Sebastian, had been declared king of Portugal. He was 16. She wept, not for pride, but fear. Her son had grown into a man surrounded by superstition, prophecy, and isolation. The Portuguese called him the Desired, believing he would reclaim lost Christian lands. But Joanna knew another truth. Sebastian was fragile, too pale, too thin, obsessed with relics and omens. He ordered executions for blasphemy and stared for hours at his own reflection. He carried a mirror polished in black obsidian. Rumors came quickly. He spoke to ghosts. He believed himself a messiah. He'd vowed never to marry, saying no woman was worthy. The priests praised his purity. Joanna knew it was terror disguised as sanctity. He had her mouth, her father's eyes, her grandfather's madness. Joanna tried to intervene. She begged Philip II to bring the boy to Spain to test his mind. Philip refused. "Let the line play itself out," he said. "That's what destiny is." In her final letter to the Portuguese court, Joanna wrote, "You call him the Desired. I call him the Repeated." It was confiscated. Joanna began fasting for weeks. Her body weakened, but her voice grew stronger in chapel sermons. She warned of the fourth generation turning back to dust. Few understood her. Those who did were afraid. She had created a king, but in her dreams, he wore a crown made of bone, and beneath it, a smile too wide. In 1578, Sebastian led a crusade into Morocco, convinced God would make him an emperor. He refused to wait for reinforcements. He ignored generals. He rode ahead of his army into the desert heat, his eyes wild, his mouth dry with fever. Joanna awoke on the day of battle screaming. The Battle of Alcácer Quibir was a massacre. Thousands of Portuguese soldiers were slaughtered. Sebastian vanished. His body was never found. Some said he drowned in the river. Others claimed he was taken by angels. Conspiracy bloomed. Joanna sat silently in her cell when the news arrived. She did not cry. She did not pray. She merely whispered. The mirror broke. With Sebastian's disappearance, Portugal fell into crisis. Joanna's life's purpose had shattered. The son she had carried through blood and silence had become myth. The line she preserved with such devotion was now a ghost story. That night, she burned every portrait of him in her chambers. Only one remained, a distorted miniature with cracked glass over the boy's face. In her chapel, she arranged skulls in a circle and prayed to no one. With Sebastian gone, the Portuguese crown passed to Philip II. The Iberian Union was forged, and Joanna's line, once destined for divine rule, was absorbed into bureaucratic obscurity. She was now the mother of a vanished king and the sister of an unfeeling emperor. Joanna withdrew from the convent's affairs. Her health failed. Her spine bent. Her jaw could no longer close fully. She often drooled and could no longer eat without pain. Her sisters in the convent whispered prayers over her body, calling her saint of the silent womb. She kept a single relic beside her bed, a locked ivory box. No one knew what was inside. One day, the confessor dared ask her, "What would you change if you could?" She smiled slowly and replied, "I would marry a stranger and bear a child with no name." She spoke no more for days. On her final night, Joanna asked to be wrapped in white, not black. "Let me leave this life unstained by it," she said, gesturing to her blood. When the sisters washed her body, they discovered a series of bruises in the shape of rosary beads along her spine. Some claimed she'd been visited by angels. Others believed her ancestors had finally come to collect her. The ivory box was opened after her death. Inside was a piece of mirror, shattered but saved. Joanna was buried with the others, among emperors and saints, her tomb inscribed only with Joanna, daughter of empire. But her story didn't end there. In the centuries that followed, portraits of her descendants bore the same look: long face, heavy jaw, solemn eyes. The Habsburgs continued to breed inward. Her great-grandnephew, Charles II of Spain, was so deformed he could not chew, read, or rule. He drooled through every royal decree, a monarch in name only. Joanna had foreseen it all, though no one had listened. Today, her story is forgotten, eclipsed by kings, wars, and myths. But if you walk the halls of the convent she built, you'll find strange things. Skulls with names scratched off, mirrors turned to the wall, a sealed door beneath the chapel marked with red wax and no key. And sometimes, very late, visitors say they see her, a woman in white, jaw crooked, hands bleeding, carrying a box. She leaves it on the steps. Inside always is a mirror, and in the mirror always is you.